Rimuru x Arifureta. Fragments of Soul to be the Strongest by Rimu_Kai. Chapter 4 Dungeon and What the Orcus Dungeon was an enigmatic labyrinth, rumored to have 100 floors, though no one truly knew its depth, as no adventurer had ever successfully conquered it. The deeper one delved, the more perilous it became. The second floor, however, was infamous among mercenaries who frequently harvested magic nuclei from weaker monsters. These magic stones, varying in size, were crucial for crafting magical tools, healing, and reinforcing mana walls. Yet, the lower floors remained uncharted, their dangers unknown. Currently, the students found themselves resting at an inn near the dungeon. Given the labyrinth's lethal nature, they needed to be well rested before their descent. The night had settled in, and all students were assigned roommates. As fate would have it, Hajime and Rimuru, bound by blood, ended up sharing a room. Rimuru sat by the window, sharpening his katana under the dim glow of the moonlight. Hajime, having flopped onto his bed, broke the silence. "Hey, Rimuru, are you nervous?" Rimuru, without looking up, replied, "Not really." "Figures," Hajime muttered before hesitating. "After all, I am not you." Rimuru sighed and finally turned to face his younger brother. "Ignore the others. Just focus on your own strength. I'm sure you'll end up stronger than Kuki." Hajime chuckled. "I'm looking forward to that." Before their conversation could continue, a sudden knock echoed through the room. "Knock, knock, knock." A gentle voice followed. "Nagumo-kun? Rimuru-kun? Are you two still awake?" Rimuru smirked. "Hey, Hajime, your girlfriend's here." Hajime immediately shot up. "She's not my girlfriend." He walked toward the door, grumbling, while Rimuru chuckled. "We'll see about that." With a click, Hajime opened the door, revealing Kaori Shirasaki, hugging a pillow, dressed in soft pajamas. Standing behind her was Shizuku Yagashi, her arms crossed in a protective stance. Hajime blinked in surprise. "What are you two doing here?" Shizuku answered before Kaori could. "Kaori wanted to talk to you." Hajime nodded before his gaze turned to Shizuku. "And you?" Shizuku smirked. "For her safety. Who knows what you might do?" Both Kaori and Hajime turned bright red. "We wouldn't," they both stammered. Rimuru chuckled. "Come in already." Shizuku turned to Rimuru, eyes landing on his katana. "Is that your sword?" Rimuru nodded. "Want to try it?" Shizuku's eyes lit up. "Absolutely yes." As she took the blade, testing its weight, Kaori sat on Hajime's bed, her expression clouded. Hajime noticed immediately. "Kaori? What's wrong?" She hesitated before speaking. "Listen, Hajime, I want you to do something for me." Hajime nodded. "Sure. What is it?" Kaori took a deep breath. "About tomorrow's dungeon expedition. I want you to stay here. I can inform our colleagues." A heavy silence fell over the room. Rimuru and Shizuku stopped in their tracks, exchanging glances. Hajime exhaled slowly. "I see, looks like you've had enough of me, huh?" Kaori's head snapped up. "No, it's not like that, you're not a burden." Rimuru's eyes darkened. "Who told you to say that? Kuki?" His voice held an edge of menace. "I'll deal with him." Hajime placed a hand on Rimuru's shoulder. "Let her finish." Rimuru sighed and returned to his spot by the window. "Go on." Kaori bit her lip. "I saw a dream." Hajime tilted his head. "A dream?" Shizuku nodded. "Yeah, she said it was bad." Kaori shuddered. "I saw you walking away, I called out to you, but you ignored me. Then, you disappeared into the shadows." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm scared, what if it becomes real?" Rimuru scoffed. "Forget it." Everyone turned to him in shock. "Dreams are just dreams," Rimuru stated firmly. "If something happens to Hajime, I'll save him. But in the end, it depends on him." Rimuru stood and walked past them. "Good night." Shizuku followed him, sparing Hajime a final glance before closing the door behind them. The room fell into silence. After a moment, Kaori spoke. "What will you do, Nagumo-kun?" Hajime smiled slightly. "I'm weaker than Rimuru, than you, but I want to help. I'm a bit stronger than before." Kaori's heart clenched. "You're not staying, are you?" Hajime chuckled. "No, I'm coming with all of you, but..." Kaori tilted her head. "But what?" Hajime hesitated before grinning. Can you protect me then, Kaori? She blinked, flustered. Huh? You have healing magic, right? If I get hurt, you can heal me. Kaori's eyes widened. But I'm not that good at it. Hajime nodded. I believe in you. A small smile formed on Kaori's lips. Then, I promise, I'll protect you. Outside, Rimuru and Shizuku listened intently. Rimuru smirked. How sweet. Shizuku folded her arms. You're eavesdropping. And you're not? Rimuru countered. Jealous? Shizuku blushed. And no. Rimuru leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a sultry whisper. You know, you don't have to hold back around me. If you ever need something, just ask. Shizuku's face turned crimson. What are you saying? At that moment, the door opened, and Kaori stepped out. Rimuru and Shizuku instantly leapt back, pretending nothing had happened. Kaori narrowed her eyes. Were you too? Nope, Shizuku said too quickly. Kaori sighed and grabbed Shizuku's hand, dragging her back to their room. Rimuru smirked before turning to Hajime, who had an amused look on his face. What was that about? Hajime asked. Rimuru shrugged. Nothing important. Let's sleep. With that, they returned to their room, and as Hajime climbed into bed, he muttered, Tomorrow's going to be interesting. Rimuru smirked. Oh, you have no idea. Next day, inside the dungeon. The group had finally reached the 20th floor of the Orcus dungeon, resting after an arduous journey. Along the way, they had fought numerous magical beasts, facing relentless attacks. The students were lined up, with Rimuru, Kuki, Shizuku, and Meld leading at the front while the rest followed, knights ensuring their safety. Despite being the weakest before, Hajime had remarkably kept pace with the frontline fighters, though he was still significantly weaker. However, Rimuru was on an entirely different level. He barely needed to lift a finger. Monsters would attack him, only to be effortlessly swatted aside, dying instantly. His sheer presence alone made the students from Kuki and Daisuke furious. Yet, the knights and Meld were impressed that Hajime, once the weakest among them, now walked beside Rimuru, proving his intelligence and talent. Before entering the dungeon, the students had received several artifacts. Kuki received the kingdom's strongest sword, which was supposed to be wielded only by a hero. However, Meld had secretly given it to Rimuru first, wanting to test if a fallen hero could wield it. The moment Rimuru picked up the sword, it glowed before being overwhelmed by his power, turning completely black. Rimuru dismissed it as weak and tossed it to Kuki, further angering him. Kuki also received the strongest armor in the kingdom. Kaori, being a healer, received a staff that greatly enhanced her abilities. Shizuku, expecting a katana due to her samurai heritage, was instead given an ordinary longsword, much to her disappointment. Hajime and Rimuru both received nearly indestructible daggers, but Rimuru crushed his bare-handed like a toy, leaving the knights and Meld in stunned silence. As they moved toward the final chamber of the 20th floor, Rimuru walked at the front, exuding absolute confidence. Hajime, Kuki, Meld, and Shizuku followed closely behind, while the other students and knights surrounded them. Suddenly, a group of griffin-like magical beasts attacked. The knights called out in alarm, and Meld commanded everyone to engage. Kuki raised his now darkened sword, his face still burning with frustration from Rimuru's dismissal. He charged at the beasts, unleashing a radiant slash imbued with light magic. The attack was powerful, cutting down one of the creatures instantly. However, the beasts were fast, and one of them dodged, slamming into him. Kuki staggered but quickly regained his balance, retaliating with another slash. His movements were flashy, and while he managed to take down a few beasts, it was evident he relied too much on brute strength rather than strategy. Kyutaru and his group attacked recklessly. He attempted to cast an offensive spell, but the monster dodged and retaliated, nearly slashing his arm off. The knight intervened, blocking the strike. Frustrated, Kyutaru finally landed a hit, but it barely wounded the beast. Unlike Kuki, Kyutaru lacked both strength and strategy, struggling significantly. Daisuke Hayama, still seething over Hajime's growing strength, fought with desperation. He launched a fire spell, missing entirely. A beast lunged at him, its claws nearly reaching his throat before a knight blocked it. Daisuke cursed under his breath. furious that he needed to be saved. Meld, a seasoned warrior, skillfully cut down the creatures attacking him. His movements were precise and calculated, unlike the students who relied on brute force. He made sure to cover the weaker students while delivering lethal strikes. A monster lunged at Hajime, forcing him to dodge at the last second. Unlike the others, he couldn't rely on overwhelming strength. Instead, he observed the creature's movements, anticipating their attacks. He landed a well-placed slash with his dagger, cutting deep into a beast's throat. Another one pounced, but he rolled out of the way, stabbing upward into its gut. Meld noticed Hajime's struggle and moved to assist, but Rimuru casually held up a hand, stopping him. "Why aren't you helping him?" Meld asked, confused. Rimuru smirked. "Let him fight. If he wants to survive, he has to earn it." Meld hesitated, but Hajime, despite being weaker, gritted his teeth and continued. After a fierce battle, he finally managed to kill the last beast. He was exhausted but victorious. The knights were impressed. Just days ago, Hajime was considered the weakest, yet here he was, proving himself. Meld watched in disbelief. The boy he had written off as the weakest was standing, panting, victorious. He's different, he's changed. Kuki scowled. He hated how Hajime had improved while he struggled to keep up with Rimuru. Kyutaru and Daisuke fumed, unwilling to accept that Hajime was getting stronger. Kaori, on the other hand, looked at Hajime with admiration. Her heart pounded. He's amazing. Shizuku, too, was impressed but focused her gaze on Rimuru. Her feelings for him hadn't changed, but she couldn't ignore Hajime's growth. Daisuke clenched his fists. Damn it, why is he getting stronger? As the battle ended, Rimuru stretched lazily, looking completely uninterested. "You're holding back." Rimuru smirked. "Of course I am. Why waste effort?" "Yet you refuse to help Hajime. He needs to struggle. He needs to suffer if he wants to grow." "Cold. I approve." Rimuru chuckled. "You know me too well, Azura. I know you better than you know yourself." Rimuru looked ahead, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. Hajime was changing, Kuki was fuming, and the others were struggling to comprehend the shifting dynamics. This was exactly what he wanted. With the battle over, they moved deeper into the dungeon. The students continued their march through the Orcus dungeon's 20th floor, their bodies exhausted from constant battles. Meld led the way with Rimuru beside him, while Hajime, Kuki, and Shizuku followed closely. The other students and knights surrounded them, ensuring their safety. Suddenly, Meld and Rimuru stopped abruptly. Kaori, Shizuku, and Hajime quickly noticed and turned to Rimuru with concern. "What's wrong?" Kaori asked hesitantly. Before Rimuru could respond, Daisuke scoffed. "Why are you asking him? He's just a freak with superpowers. He probably sensed something dumb." Meld shot Daisuke a sharp glare, shutting him up instantly. "There's a dangerous monster approaching. Get ready for battle." As the students took battle stances, Rimuru ignored them and casually walked forward. His calm, confident stride irritated Kuki, who clenched his fists in frustration. "Rimuru, stop being reckless." Kuki barked, his pride wounded. Rimuru smirked and turned his gaze toward him, eyes gleaming with arrogance. "Ah, is the hero worried about little ol' me? That's adorable." Kuki gritted his teeth, but before he could retort, the ground trembled. A massive beast, resembling the griffin-like monsters they had previously fought, but easily 3 times larger, emerged with a deafening roar. The students recoiled in fear, some gasping in horror. Rimuru raised his hand lazily. "Eat it all, Beelzebub." A thick black smoke poured from his palm, twisting and spiraling toward the monstrous creature. The moment it touched the beast, it was swallowed whole. Flesh, bones, and even the stone wall behind it disappeared into the swirling abyss before it receded back into Rimuru's palm. "There," Rimuru said flatly, dusting off his hands. "No more monster." Silence. Kyutaru's mouth hung open in disbelief. That's just cheating." Kuki clenched his fists. "Ridiculous, he didn't even fight it." Daisuke scowled, his pride crumbling. "What a joke. He thinks he's above everyone else just because of his stupid powers." The rest of the students exchanged uneasy glances. They had trained, fought, and struggled against every monster, yet Rimuru had erased a powerful foe in an instant. The difference was overwhelming. Kaori stepped closer to Hajime, her eyes shimmering with admiration. That was amazing. Shizuku nodded, though she gave Rimuru a long look, her expression unreadable. Overkill, but effective. Inside Rimuru's mind, a voice chuckled. Oh my, showing off now. How unbecoming of you. Rimuru sighed internally. It's not showing off if it's practical. Oh really? Strutting ahead of everyone, waving your hand like some dark overlord. You wanted them to see, to fear, to admire you. Rimuru smirked mentally. And it worked. My, such arrogance. I love it. But remember, even a king can fall if he becomes too full of himself. Meld cleared his throat. Alright, we'll take a short break, but remain cautious, monsters could still be lurking. The students nodded, finding places to sit and rest. Water bottles were passed around, and the tension in the air gradually faded. Kaori stole occasional glances at Hajime, fidgeting nervously. Hajime, noticing her looks, turned away quickly, flustered. Shizuku smirked. You're not turning this into some romance anime, are you? Kaori blushed. No, of course not. Shizuku grinned mischievously. Let's see, how about, I stared longingly at my crush while we fought for our lives in a fantasy world. Kaori's face turned crimson. Shizuku. That's not funny. Shizuku chuckled before her expression softened. Seriously though, you should just tell him how you feel. It's not like you'll get hurt. Kaori hesitated. I don't know. Shizuku sighed. You've been watching him like a lost puppy. Just tell him already. Kaori pouted before a devilish grin spread across her face. Oh, you're giving me love advice now. Should I ask how you feel about Rimuru? Shizuku immediately froze, her cheeks turning pink. That's. Kaori giggled. Oh, so you do like him. Shizuku exhaled sharply. I do, but it's not that simple. He's different. He's annoying. Kaori teased. Shizuku sighed. Arrogant, smug, infuriating, and yet, I can't stop thinking about him. Kaori smiled. Then maybe you should take your own advice. Before Shizuku could respond, Kaori's attention shifted toward the remains of the stone wall Rimuru had devoured. She and Shizuku stood up and approached Commander Meld. What are those crystals? Kaori asked curiously. Meld glanced at the sparkling gems embedded in the remains of the wall. Magic crystals. Extremely valuable. Most are used for enchanting weapons or, well, wedding rings. Kaori's eyes sparkled. Ah, that's beautiful. Daisuke saw his chance. With a smug grin, he strode forward. If that's the case, I might just grab one for myself. The knights, who had been surveying the area, suddenly paled. One of them shouted, Commander, it's a trap. But it was too late. The moment Daisuke touched a crystal, the ground beneath them glowed with intricate patterns. A blinding blue light erupted, enveloping everyone except the knights and Rimuru, who had stayed further back. The knights panicked as the light faded, revealing that only Meld and the students had vanished. We need to inform the higher-ups, one knight declared, and they quickly left the area. Rimuru stared at the empty space before sighing. Well, that's inconvenient. Oh dear, looks like you lost your toys. Azra, Rimuru muttered, teleport me to them. No. What? Rimuru scowled. Walking is good for you. Think of it as training. Rimuru sighed. Seriously. You're making me do this the hard way. Of course. You need hardship. Struggle. Besides, this is the perfect chance to conquer more dungeon floors. Rimuru groaned. Fine, I'll do it myself. That's my good boy. Now, get going. And don't die. Rimuru rolled his eyes and began walking. TCH. You're enjoying this way too much. To be continued.